Hey there, YouTube. I have another video request. I was working with a friend today on his radio, and while we were working on another issue he had, he asked a question about global functions versus special functions. And after I explained it to him, he said, "Hey, you should put a video up on that. It'd probably be very helpful." So I just put together a quick little demo to show the difference between special functions and global functions. So fundamentally, special functions and global functions do the same thing. Same type of thing. If you look at the way a global function is laid out, you've got a switch, an action, some parameters, and whether or not it's enabled or how it works. And the same thing applies in a model under special function. You have a switch, an action, a parameter, and how it works. Whether it's on and what its behavior is when it's activated. The big difference is that a global function is enabled under the radio, under the general settings of the radio itself, and a special function is enabled under a model. So let me show you what that means. If you want to change global functions, you don't click on one of your models to edit. You click on the general settings for the radio itself. And when you bring that up, you'll see there's a tab there called Global Functions. So what this basically means is that everything we define as a global function will apply to all models. Okay? The difference is in a special function, whatever we define in the special function box will only apply for that particular model. In this case, the model I'm using is called Test 1 on this one, and on this model, this model is called Test 2. And you can see those are the two models I have defined in this particular EEPROM. Okay, so let's do an example. As you can see in this model, Test 1, I've enabled switches SF down for reset, SA up, SA middle, and SA down to play a track indicating the status of my flaps, and then SH down is my instant trim. All right? On Model 2, I have no special functions defined. Nothing is defined. These are all default values. So what will end up happening is that when you're using a special function, anything that's defined as a special function will work. Anything that's defined as a global function will also work. So notice the difference on my flaps, for example. I have SA up, SA middle, and SA down all playing a flaps track. Flaps up, flaps half, and flaps down. Okay? On the general section, or the global function in the general section, the flaps track is assigned to switch B. So let's take a look at what that'll look like. I'm just going to bring up the simulator, and when I do that, I'll move it out of the way so we can see both sets of switches. So I have a special function in this model defined for SA up, SA middle, and SA down. So that means if I click SA middle, there, I'll turn the volume up a little bit. If I click SA middle or SA down,
flaps down,
it'll play the track that's assigned in this special function. Okay?
flaps half, flaps up.
So if you spend any time at all in Taranis, you probably are familiar with this special functions tab. Now, on the global functions side, I've got those same values working on switch B. So what that means is that switch B will also play those tracks. Okay? So I'll click on it and we'll listen to it.
Flaps half.
All right?
Flaps down.
Now, I don't have switch B defined for a special function in the model. That's only in the global function. All right? Now, if we do the simulator on Test 2, where there are no special functions assigned, the only audio tracks we get will be the ones that are defined as a global function. So in this one, if I move the SA switch, nothing happens. I don't get an audio track. But if I move SB, listen.
Flaps half. Flaps down. Flaps half.
Okay, so what's going on in this case is that the values from SB up, SB middle, and SB down are coming. The track that plays is coming from the global functions definition. Okay, so you might wonder, well, why does that matter? Well, when I first started using Taranis, I would go in, when I created a model, every single time I did it, and especially before I started using Companion, I would have to go into the special functions page on the radio, and I would define all of the things that I used on multiple models. So, for example, my timer. I use a reset timer. I use the SF switch. That's the top left switch on the far back side. I use that to reset my flight timer. In some aircraft, I'll do flaps. I always set an instant trim, and that's the momentary switch on the right-hand side. I set the instant trim up on the momentary switch. And I did this basically on every model. There were a whole bunch of things. The instant trim was a favorite. The reset my timer, that was a favorite. So basically, every time I made a model, I'd have to go into the special functions tab and add those definitions. Then I learned about global functions, and when I realized what that did, I quickly figured out, well, I'll put all the common things that I use on all of my models in the global functions section. And that's really the important part about it. Anything you put in global functions is going to work across every single model. So you may have some airplanes that don't have flaps. So flaps may not be a particularly good example. I just did that for a quick demo. But instant trim, that's probably a pretty good example. If you always have an instant trim set on the momentary switch, it'd be a good idea to put that in global functions. That way, when you create a new model, like I did with this test 2, you don't have to worry about going into special functions and defining it. You know that it'll be enabled in the global functions capability. Now, one last thing I'll point out before I close this video out is that you do have to enable global functions in the model setup page, and that's right here. There's a checkbox. You just got to put a check in there, and that will enable global functions. So on the flip side, if you don't want your global functions to apply to a particular model, you can simply uncheck that. So I'm going to uncheck it here, and we'll run the simulator real quick, and we'll try see if we can get the flaps to make noise, the flaps button to work. And see, nothing. The reason it's not doing it is because I unchecked the global functions option in the setup screen. So I'll put a check back in it, and that should get our flaps back working for us.
Flaps half.
There we go.
Flaps down.
Okay, so that should be a pretty good place to stop. I just wanted to show the difference between special functions and global functions. To recap, they basically do the same thing. It's just that when you put something in global functions, it'll work across every model. When you put something in a special functions tab, that switch or that definition that you created only applies for that specific model. It won't apply to others. So you can use this really to speed up the configuration of airplanes as you add them without having to go into the radio or into Companion and going crazy, clicking everything and hoping that you got everything right. By the way, one of my other ones that I like to use is rates. I do high, medium, and low rates, and I'll set those tracks up in the global functions to play the value. I'm on high rates, medium rates, or low rates. So, and I pretty much do that across every airplane. I don't like to move that switch around. For me, that is always SB. So if I want to change my rates, I use SB. And so for my model definitions, I like defining SB as the rates switch. All right. So that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed the video. And if it was helpful to you, please hit like and subscribe so other people will be able to find this video when they search on YouTube for this type of information. Take care. Have a good one.